This video is about the history of marketing metal type. You are reading this message because of hundreds of years of engraving and casting that produce many families of fonts on your hard drive. Printed examples shown are specimens collected over 75 years. Thank you.
The process of casting of type remained for over 500 years. Movable type in Germany began with the 42-line Bible. The art of casting type moved from Germany to Italy. Hundreds of books were printed, and they represented by some of the finest printing and book binding. The decline of foundry type in this period might well be illustrated by the size of ATF specimen books. While the magnificent 1923 catalog was typical of its day at 1148 pages, subsequent editions were ever smaller. The 1943 catalog was only 207 pages, while the 1941 catalog was slightly smaller at 191 pages. The last ATF catalog published in 1976 and distributed right to the end was down to only 14 pages. During World War II, American type founders were making parts for the military. Someone thought it would be patriotic to scrap some of the 100-year-old matrices acquired from other foundries. Fortunately, the sales manager stopped the project.
To get some idea of the enormous amount of work required in bringing out a complete line of typefaces, here are the matrices required for Lydian. Almost 1,000, each one perfect in every detail, from the largest, 96 point, to the smallest, 10 point.
Continental Type Founders Association was founded by Melbert Brinkerhoff Carey Jr. in 1925 to distribute foundry type imported from European foundries. The influence of more modern European type design was felt in the United States for the first time, and American foundries responded by imitating many of the more popular faces. This font is bold, but was copied by ATF under the name of Paramount. Last of the Dutch type foundries was the Lettergieterij. It was a most complete printing supply company. It made type from drawings, had a large printing department for producing advertising material. It was also the agent for the Heidelberg presses. While visiting there in 1970, I was asked to sign in the Queen's book. These are the last two type foundries in Holland. Barnard Brothers and Spindler became an active subsidiary because of their elaborate type library. These type families were brought back from the archives and were put in the modernistic category. On my visit to Stuyvesant Blake, I was told about the storing of matrices from the Bauer Foundry at Frankfurt during World War II. This was done to protect the type foundry sales after the war. Coming out of the wartime destruction and getting back in business required the strategy of reviving 100-year-old type families such as Venus. Berthold, the 150-year-old company, came to a halt. Their recovery was hampered by the sale of foundry type. Following World War II, Berthold produced and marketed many phototypesetting devices that became obsolete with appearance of digital type production. The C. Weber Foundry produced many of the fonts of Georg Trump and Metal, and all of them have been digitized. The Stempel foundry was the last remaining foundry in Germany. They had a contract with Linotype for making matrices. Eventually the foundry became the property of the Mergenthaler Linotype Company. Marketing brought the Egyptians or Clarendons. This was short-lived. David Crater, president of Castcraft Incorporated, purchased Custerman Caster from East Germany. He also brought over personnel to run them and teach his staff to establish a true foundry type operation. He brought mats from European firms and established type founders of Chicago. Castcraft purchased the assets of Neon Type. After World War II, a new foundry opened up in Japan. ATF had sold off some Benton engraving equipment and Barth casters. A most interesting story was Nippon Type Foundry's ability to produce galvanic matrices from original cast type. Many of the Stempel fonts were duplicated and cast under the Neon name. The monotype caster is a type foundry in itself. Many type foundries sprung up by casting type from the monotype library.
Video. So what's that big block of?
These are some of the firms that sold type cast from monotypes. Most of the buyers were letterpress printers. In 1944 I worked nights at LA Type while going to high school. I think I was the first person to cast Times Roman. The matrices were flown over from England during World War II. The competition was beginning. The original Helvetica family was thrown together with odds and ends from Interat Grotesque.